Hello and welcome to the video. This is a review of this model here. Now this is the Eachine and DIATONE ER349 3-inch quad. Has an 800 milliwatt VTX on here and is actually a cracking little model. Now I did a video a little while ago talking about my favourite sub 250 gram models, and not to give the game away too much, but this is probably right up there with my favourite outdoor sub 250 grammers. So while I unbox this thing and show you how it comes, let me go through some of the specs. So this is actually probably got more to do with DIATONE than Eachine, to be fair. This is very similar to a DIATONE model, and there's a couple of differences, and I'll run through what those are. So this is about 130 grams, wheelbase of about 143.5 millimeters. It's designed for 4S, but actually runs beautifully on 3S as well. 3-inch props. The camera inside here is a little Runcam Micro Swift. The antenna is a little dipole antenna, but the VTX is one of the differences. The VTX is actually a TBS unit. It's the TBS Unify 800 milliwatts. So this will put out an awful lot of power if you turn that up. Again, it's all controllable via smart audio. Flight controller is a Mamba F405. The manual's pretty good, shows you how it's all put together, but you don't need to worry about any of that because it's all done for you. And also the ESCs are Mamba 25 amp 4S D-Shot 1200 ESCs, and the motors are Mamba Racing MB1408 4000 kV units. Now the only other change really from the original DIATONE is the fact that this is more of a stretched X-frame rather than a full X-frame, and that provides a really nice flying experience. The original version of this from DIATONE, I never got my hands on it, but I heard some very good things. This one seems to have taken all of that goodness and just tweaked it up a little more. Things like the video transmitter being different, the frame being slightly different as well, but still keeping it under that magic 250 gram limit. First impressions as you take it out of the box are very good indeed. The antenna's kept in place with a little clip, so you're going to need to undo that and stick it up. I supported mine with another cable tie. There's loads of cable ties in the box, as well as spare battery straps for different lengths and sizes of battery. The actual frame, this stretched edge, which I'm guessing is part of the Eachine stuff, is really nice, and all the edges are chamfered. The build quality is really good. There's some really nice soldering. The way the cables are all routed, the way everything's put together is absolutely spot on. And you can actually see on here on the top it says DIATONE Standard Edition, and you've got kind of the Eachine stuff screen printed on the top, and that's definitely what it feels like. It feels like this is a DIATONE DNA machine with some Eachine tweaks. XT30 connector, and there is a little bit of room inside for your receiver. It doesn't come with a receiver, so you've got to get one of those. So you need something like an XSR, and I'll show you what I did to pop this inside. So there's a little flying cable that's out the back that's got the right connector for the receiver, and what you need to do is take off the top and then just plug in your XSR into those wires, and you are ready to go. You just need to bind it. You will have to plug the power in to bind it. It doesn't supply the 5 volts from the USB connection. One thing I did notice as I was taking this thing apart was the fact that there is thread lock on the bolts that's going into metal components, and I love seeing things like that. It just shows some real attention rather than being something that's been thrown together. So I'm guessing we can thank DIATONE for those little touches. Once the top is off, then there isn't a massive amount of space in here. You can see at the bottom we have the ESC, then the flight controller, and the TBS unit is on the top. So you've got two options for where you want to put your receiver. You can either squeeze it on top of the TBS unit, or there's just enough room behind the stack for it to squeak in there as well. I decided to put it on top of the model, so covered it in a little bit of heat shrink just to protect it. The TBS unit does get quite warm in operation, so just keep an eye on that if you're going to use it at higher powers. The other thing you might notice here is the other thing that they did, Eachine added an LED board at the top of the unit, and although that's a nice idea, I'm not sure that's actually of any real use. It might help you at dusk if it lands in grass the right way up. you have the LEDs to find it, but it does mean that it limits the amount of angle that you can get on the camera. So the micro swift that's in here is always going to be pointing up towards the sky. You could just remove that piece if you wanted to, and that would all save you a couple of grams too. I'm going to route the cables around the front arms and heat shrink them onto cable ties that came in the box. So with that all done, then this thing is put together. Let's plug it into BetaFlight and see what the settings are like on here. So first thing I've noticed, the data flash actually has some data in it. So somebody at the factory actually armed this, great. But the accelerometer isn't enabled. So this is really aimed at pilots who don't care about angle or horizon mode. So a couple of interesting things straight out the bat. VTX TBS Smart Audio for the configuration of the TBX unit. D-Shock 600, motor stop isn't turned on. 8K gyro, 2K PID loop frequencies. And then pretty much everything else is exactly as you'd expect. Air mode isn't permanently enabled, interestingly, but the rest of it looks pretty standard stuff. Battery and power look like this. PID tuning, we'll come back to PID tuning because I don't think this is particularly sharp, is like that. It definitely needs a little bit of work. It's a little bit squidgy, fine in angle, but if you want to really throw it around, it's not going to work. You're going to have to go into the receiver tab and set that up for how you have your own preferences and how your radio's working. The modes out the box are very, very basic, so you're going to have to spend some time and come in here and set your modes up to, unless all you want to do is arm and fly in acro. And then you've got the standard OSD layout. I tweaked a couple of things around just so it fitted how I normally like to see everything in the screen. Big surprise with this is the version of BetaFlight. This is 3.5.1 from September 2018. There's been an awful lot of upgrades to BetaFlight, so I'm surprised that they're not running a later version with a sharper tune. And that's one of the few things on this model that isn't fab. So what I did, I turned on the accelerometer to give me the other modes, and then suddenly I could see that it wasn't sat completely flat on the desk. And then I went in and set up the modes as I tend to use for reviews with angle, horizon, and rate mode. So now we've got it all set up in BetaFlight. Let's charge a battery. I'm using a little 653S battery from Race Day Quads for the test flight, and let me show you what it actually looks like. So surprise, surprise, the camera and video transmitter from TBS are doing a really good job. I'm using linear antennas on my goggles to match the linear antenna that's actually on this thing. I'm running at 25 milliwatts and getting really nice performance. It's a little bit windy, it's also a little bit overcast, but this was image from the maiden flight. And it performed really nicely, even with that subpar tune, particularly in angle mode and horizon mode for pootling about. It is absolutely fab. And out of that 650 mAh 3S pack, I'm getting about 3.5 minutes of flight time. A bit longer if you're gentle, a bit less if you're flying it like a hooligan. But it's hovering at about a quarter to a third throttle, so even on 3S it has absolutely loads of power. So this could support a slightly larger battery, which would give you longer flight times. On 3S it's a nice, sedate but powerful quad. On 4S it's an absolute hooligan. So if you want to fly it like you stole it, then 4S is going to be the way to go. So in summary, what do I think? Well, I really like it. It's a 3-inch quad that thinks, behaves and acts like a much bigger model, and it'll squeak under the 250 gram limit too. It's well made with decent components. You can see a lot of that Diatone DNA in the way it's put together, and the stretch frame, the addition of the LEDs on top, and also the upgraded VTX are all nice additions over the original Diatone model. As I said, it's great on 3S, definitely get away with a larger battery than the 650 I've been flying it on here. On 4S it is a little bit of a speed machine, and there's absolutely tons of power. I do like the fact that there is a spare set of props in the box. You're probably going to need those. I've been lucky and not managed to snap any of the ones here, but the props supplied are very stiff. So if you did manage to hit something, they are not going to survive very well. So make sure that you keep those spares handy, and I'd probably order another spare set as well, because this is one of those quads that you just want to fly around and have a ball with. Remember that there are different battery straps in the box as well. There's also a little buzzer that you can attach. I just enabled the beeper function for the motors, and that's been really great in helping me find it when it did come down in the long grass. A couple of things that have stopped this from being a perfect model. The first is that older version of BetaFlight, it should be 4.0 now. A lot of the quads that I've got in recently are running a much more modern version of BetaFlight, and that provides a nicer flying experience. The tune as well needs to be worked on, so I would probably recommend, if you're going to get one of these, update it to a later version of BetaFlight and spend a bit of time tuning. This is something that Eachine don't tend to do very well, is the tuning part, so it's something I hope they spend more time on in the future. The manual isn't easy to find on how it's all set up, but to be honest, if you kind of follow along with what I've done in here, you'll get it set up without too much stress or hassle. You are going to have to add your own XSR receiver. The plug is designed for that receiver, so if you want to use something else, you're going to be clipping and crimping, soldering wires. So if you are a FreeSky pilot, then when you're ordering this, get your XSR as well if you haven't got one in the spares bin. Having the buzzer installed on the frame would have been nice. There is room at the back underneath the antenna. A buzzer enabled on a model like this, I think, is absolutely necessary. It's very easy to lose this if it lands in anything apart from freshly mown grass, and you won't want to lose this once you've got hold of it. It is only a linear antenna, and that's fine. I've got some pretty good range out of this on 25 milliwatts with a linear antenna on the goggles. The VTX goes up to 800 milliwatts, but it would have been nice to have an option for some kind of little SMA or maybe flying lead that has some circular polarized antenna on it instead of the linear. But overall, this is a little cracker. If you're happy to play with BetaFlight and get it updated and tweak it a little bit, this is probably my favourite 3-inch quad. And that's saying something, because that's some very stiff competition against things like the Emax Babyhawk and things like the ViFly X150. But if you want the experience of a bigger quad with modern components under 250 grams, this should be on your list. Thanks for watching the video and watching right to the very end. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you like the video and like what I'm doing here, then hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification icon too. If you really like what I'm doing, you can go the extra mile and become one of my Patreons for access to me directly for support, and also giveaways and regular updates too. If you're looking for particular content, then check out the playlist. I organise all of my videos into playlists, so if you're looking for a particular topic, you can find everything here. If it's called Introduction To, it's designed to start very simply and build on that simple introduction to teach you all about it. If it's called For Beginners, then that is really aimed at people who are brand new to that part of the hobby. You can also search on YouTube for anything that you're interested in using the search function at the top. So iNav Painless 360 will find all of my videos and even the playlist around iNav. So thanks again for watching, and happy flying.